Have you ever felt your energy drain away for no apparent reason, as if something invisible were quietly siphoning off your inner strength? It's not just physical fatigue, it's something deeper, a sense that the soul itself is being consumed in silence. What few realize is that this happens through small, almost imperceptible choices, repeated day after day. And by the time we finally notice, we no longer have the strength for what truly matters. This is where the words of Carl Gustav Jung become decisive. Psychic energy is not infinite, and if we fail to protect it, we become prisoners of what depletes us. There is a part of us we would rather not see, an inner territory where we store what frightens us, what we believe is too ugly, too inadequate, too dangerous to be shown to the world. Desires we refuse to admit, fears we hide even from ourselves, impulses we judge unacceptable. We pretend they do not exist, yet they remain there, breathing in silence. And the more force we use to push them down, the more vital energy we lose in that act of repression. It is like trying to keep a door locked, while something on the other side pushes relentlessly against it. Carl Jung reminds us that this battle does not end in forgetting. The shadow does not vanish simply because we deny it. It waits patiently for an opening, and when we do not give it conscious space, it finds ways to return. Often it comes back unexpectedly, projected onto other people, into situations that disturb us, into conflicts that seem to come from the outside, but are in truth reflections from within. It is at this point that Jung's famous warning becomes so clear. What you deny in yourself eventually turns against you as fate. Every effort to keep the shadow imprisoned is energy wasted, energy that could be available for life, for creativity, for relationships. Instead of moving lightly, we walk heavily, burdened by everything we insist on hiding. Repression does not only drain us, it also fragments us, splitting us between the mask we present and the reality we refuse to acknowledge. But there is an alternative. Instead of fighting the shadow, we can recognize it. Instead of spending energy to repress it, we can approach it with courage, understanding that it is not an enemy but part of the wholeness of who we are. To integrate the shadow does not mean to live out its impulses blindly, but to transform it into creative force, into expanded awareness. True freedom lies not in denial, but in looking inward without fear, allowing even darkness itself to become a source of light. How often do we stop being who we truly are in order to become what others expect of us? We grow up learning to wear a social mask, what Carl Gustav Jung called the persona. The persona in itself is not a problem, for we need it to live in society, to relate to others, to fulfill roles. But when we confuse ourselves with that mask, when we believe it to be our true identity, we begin to waste energy sustaining an appearance that does not correspond to our essence. The price is high. With every smile that does not rise from within, with every word spoken only to please, with every silence forced to avoid disapproval, we give away a little of our vitality. Little by little, we drift away from the self, the source of our wholeness, and start living for the external gaze, like actors on a stage that never truly belonged to us. The applause of others may sound comforting for a moment, but soon it reveals its emptiness, for it does not feed the soul. It merely keeps the mask in place. Jung reminds us that the true conflict is not in wearing the persona, but in believing it is all that we are. That illusion drains us, because we try to meet infinite and contradictory expectations, attempting to be everything to everyone while forgetting to be something for ourselves. The energy that could be used to create, to love, to deepen our own path is wasted in a theater of conventions. Deep down, we all know that pleasing the entire world is impossible. There will always be criticism. There will always be looks that fail to understand. Liberation begins when we recognize that we do not need to be accepted by everyone. We need to be true before ourselves. By removing the mask now and then, by allowing our essence to emerge, we reclaim the energy once trapped in the effort of performing. And it is in this encounter with the self that we rediscover not only our strength, but also the authenticity that can transform our lives. Within each of us there are tensions, wounds, and contradictions we would rather not face. Old scars, uncomfortable memories, emotions that frighten us with the weight they carry. Instead of confronting them, we often choose the path of escape. We numb ourselves with distractions, try to fill every silence with noise, every emptiness with activity, every discomfort with some form of instant pleasure. It feels like momentary relief, but in truth it is only postponement. The conflict we avoid does not vanish. It remains alive in the unconscious, demanding energy to be kept out of awareness. Carl Gustav Jung reminds us that the unconscious always seeks compensation, and what is not acknowledged returns in other forms. Denied anger bursts out in sudden loss of control. Hidden fear paralyzes us when we least expect it. Repressed desire is projected onto others, shaping judgments and criticisms that say more about us than about them. It is as if everything we avoid becomes an invisible guest, feeding on our inner strength, draining the energy that could be available for life. The price of this escape is exhaustion. We rush from one stimulus to another, yet never find peace. We move from distraction to distraction, but the emptiness always returns, larger each time. The more we run, the more we feed the shadow that pursues us. Avoiding inner conflict resolves nothing. It only keeps us trapped in a cycle of depletion. Liberation begins the moment we find the courage to stop and listen to what truly disturbs us, not to drown in pain, but to give a name to what longs for recognition. When we look inward with sincerity, what once felt like a threat becomes a path. What once drained us begins to release creative force. Facing our inner conflicts is one of the hardest tasks, but also one of the most liberating, for it restores to the conscious self what was lost in the unconscious. Only then, by acknowledging what we avoid, can we transform escape into learning and turn the weight into vital energy. We live in an age that invites us to hurry, where every moment is filled with images, sounds, and information cascading without pause. Notifications, news, noise, and distractions compete for our attention every second. And it is easy to believe that being constantly busy means truly living. Yet behind this endless agitation hides a silent danger, the loss of depth. When the soul finds no time for silence, when it is not allowed to rest in the fertile emptiness, psychic energy scatters into fragments, unable to concentrate on what truly matters. Carl Gustav Jung warned us of this condition when he said, "The life not lived in us is a life that exacts its price." And indeed, every moment we trade the essential for what is mere appearance. Every time we surrender to the endless current of superficiality, something within us remains unfulfilled. The constant glare of external images dims the gentler light of inner life, and we become trapped in emotion that never satisfies, for it does not feed the roots, it only decorates the surface. The cost of this fragmented life is a silence filled with emptiness. Surrounded by stimuli, we feel drained. Never truly alone, yet we experience loneliness. Superficiality promises relief, but delivers only weariness. It promises pleasure, yet leaves behind the haunting sense that something essential has slipped away. To reclaim depth does not mean abandoning the world, but finding the courage to pause, to listen, to allow silence to reveal what images cannot. It means letting psychic energy gather, focus, and find direction. When we dare to live not only on the surface, but from the center of ourselves, we discover that meaning is not found in the excess of stimuli, but in the quality of presence. And in that silent descent, we recover the energy once lost in fragments, transforming dispersion into clarity and superficiality into a life fully lived. There are moments when life speaks to us in silence, a dream that repeats itself, a symbol that returns in different forms, an intuition that insists on being heard. These are subtle yet powerful signs that do not come from outside but from the deepest part of ourselves. Carl Gustav Jung called this inner force the self, the instance that guides the human being toward wholeness. To ignore these calls is like closing our eyes before a lighthouse in the midst of darkness. When we treat our dreams as meaningless images, when we dismiss our intuitions as coincidences, when we disregard the symbols that arise from the unconscious, we are in fact resisting the soul's most essential process, individuation. This resistance comes at a cost, for the psychic energy that naturally seeks fulfillment is diverted. Instead of flowing, it fragments, dispersing into futile efforts to silence what longs for recognition. Jung reminds us that the energy of the soul is not static but dynamic, always oriented toward growth. To block this movement does not make it disappear. It merely turns into weight, into anxiety, into emptiness. And the more we deny it, the more insistent the call becomes, returning through dreams or events the very thing we tried to conceal. To recognize the self does not mean to immediately decipher every symbol or to blindly follow every intuition. It means cultivating a careful listening, accepting that inner life also has a language and that it longs to be heard. When we find the courage to welcome this call, the energy once wasted in resistance transforms into creative force, into clarity, into direction. To deny the self is to waste one's very essence. To listen to it is to awaken to what we are destined to become. And in this choice, the soul finds not only meaning, but the inexhaustible source of its true vitality. The ideas of Carl Jung are not merely theory, but a call to consciousness. Every small daily choice brings us closer to or farther from our true center. The conclusion is an invitation to realize that the energy of the soul is not infinite and that its direction depends on us. To deny emotions and desires consumes our vitality. The shadow does not disappear. It only returns in distorted form, projected onto people and situations. What we avoid becomes destiny. The path is to recognize in order to integrate. The persona helps us live in society, but when we believe we are nothing but the mask, we drift away from the self. Sustaining appearances drains energy. True freedom arises when we dare to be authentic. When we flee into distractions, we keep our conflicts alive in the unconscious, which requires energy to remain hidden. What we avoid returns as symptoms and crises. Healing begins when we have the courage to look within. Excess stimuli scatter our energy and leave us empty. As Jung said, the unlived life exacts its price. We regain strength when we seek silence and depth. Dreams and intuitions are invitations from the self. To ignore them is to waste the energy that longs for fulfillment. To listen is to turn resistance into direction, guiding us toward wholeness. Transformation does not lie in denying shadows or conflicts, but in giving conscious direction to psychic energy. Every authentic choice is freedom. Every step toward the self is blossoming.